Hello everyone, my name is Mladen Đurić. Probably it's easier for Czechs to pronounce that, and probably it's more hard for the Westerns to cope with our soft letters. I've been quite long in this industry. You can see it, that's the name of this session. We will try to cover Docker for Drupal. So that is not Docker for Drupal like I like the lingo of for. It is the project that I'm using actually to work on some projects. Maybe I look here older than I'm actually. That is why I shaved. That's the hint for the old guys. If you see that I was born before the time of the Linux, before the Unix epoch, I was born in 1966, so I've seen everything from the rise of the mainframe, small 8-bit processors, those there. I tried C, went bankrupt and give myself best working in pre-press industry, but I didn't bankrupt after all. And finally I realized that I would like to be back in web technologies, and from 2007 I'm really actively in Drupal world. I started with Drupal 5 or something like that. So these things in a way define me. For instance, this assembly language brings me back to the DevOps, which I really like, working on the system. And on the other hand, my pre-press experience brings me to the front-end development. And of course, everything in between. So yes, I do know the back end of the Drupal. And I don't suck as much as people might say, but I was actually focused on the two sides, on the DevOps and on the other hand, on the front end. But today we're going to talk about DevOps. I'm having my own server that I'm maintaining. I'm using BOA, actually, Agir platform, which is fantastic for deploying Drupal and handling and everything. But I came to a conclusion that I needed something special, and I wanted to test that in Docker. So this is approximate timetable, so it adds up to 50 minutes, and we have 45, and I will try to make myself on some things brief, and on some things maybe funny, but not as much funny as that guy, because I like him a lot. So this is the problem. What is the problem here? The main problem is that we're trying to do, yes, there is not just one problem, there are many problems. I will try now to present you the most important problems that I was facing as someone who was trying to help people set up their local development. The first thing is system setup. Any junior developer that comes to the company usually has something with the computer, and then they say, help him or her set up the database, the Nginx or Apache, and then you have to explain them the use of the terminal, the use of this, the use of that. But that is not such a big problem. Actually, it's not a big problem for me. But for them, it is like voodoo. You know, you're setting something like PHP, Nginx, putting things here and there. Then one uses CentOS, the other one is using Ubuntu, the third one is using something else. Then you have to cope with package managers and things. And it could be a problem. I think that you're all aware of that you usually need few days to set up the guy or a girl so they can work in your company environment, collaborate with you, or something like that. And then again, you need some project setup. That means that you actually need to set up a project for instance, your setup is, you set up your Nginx, your Apache, your PHP, and it works. And then again, you need some tweaks for some kind of project. Okay, you do that again for the little guy or girl, and it is working in some way. And then you have to make some quick fix of some old site or project you were working for. Of course, today you're on PHP 5.6, but that was back in the days when it was 5.3, for instance, and that is the way that it is set up on some server, on some shared hosting. Of course, you're seeing errors that that server is not seeing because of different versions. Oh yes, then you have the Nginx there and Apache it yourself, or you have Apache and there is Nginx, htaccess is not working, and so on and so on. Then again, you have to set up a different project for a colleague which is working on something different. Then you have some weird project with some weird dependencies on the production system, of course, because we always have to match on our local environment. Then, as I said, there are requirements like old version, new version. You like to test if your code is working on a 7.1. And then when everything is working, and it is working on a glass legs, if I may say. Why? Because, for instance, you have to set up Apache Solr for a search. But that production has one Apache, and other production has a different kind of Apache Solr installed on the system. And you have to match both because you're working on those two projects. Then you still have a problem. And even when everything is working, everything is fine, you set up the system, you tweak it up, and everything is working perfectly, you make a system upgrade. I'm not sure how it works on Linux because I'm on a Mac, obviously. But when you make a major upgrade on Mac, it moves your system settings and make a new Apache. Your configurations are saved, that's true. But you have to make the diff between the old one and the new one because Apache is new, and now that Apache is not respecting some old things that you made. So you're getting into the problem, really. Or if you wish to do a testing, how would your system, your site, your web application, how would that work under PHP 7.1? Or you're working and you want to archive the project. What would that mean? You would like to preserve the environment you were working on. Because today, you remember 5 projects ago, what was the environment, PHP, and so on. But what would happen 2 years from now? Will you remember still what was your environment? So these are the problems where you actually wish somehow, please do sit down. You will not interrupt me. I'm very hard to get interrupted. So, in a way, you would like to archive the properties of the project you were working on. And these are all the cases where you realize that even if you can make your perfect local development setup, you will still have the problem. So, it's not the problem about you or setting the machine. It's the problem in itself. Each project requires some tweaks, some tweaking, and so on in order to work. And that brings us to the Docker. So what's the story about the Docker? Docker is, I've used 9 minutes, that's a good one. So what's the story with the Docker? Docker is a container technology. Obviously, it's not shipping container like ships and whales and so on. But the thing is that Docker is one of the container technologies. Just let me, no. Okay. So it is just one of the Docker, one of the container technologies that are available for you. You can go with the Docker, and that would be fine. Why? Because Docker is not. I don't like things like religion from the first. It's not the question of believing in existence of God or not. So it's not the question if you believe what the Docker is all about. Do you believe it is a good one or a bad one things? We are kind of the rational people, at least in this field, and we are using reasoning to make a decision do we need something or not? So it is not the question of believing if Docker is a solution for you, but it is the question that you have to ask yourself what type of isolating the system for the project is good for me. There are, for instance, LXC, you know that, Linux containers. Actually, Docker was using Linux containers technology before they decided to spin to fork their own way. You can use actually Linux containers without any problem. You can even achieve anything that I will talk about today. But still, the main difference between Linux containers or Docker or some other technology like FreeBSD jails, or I don't know how it's called in Solaris, but it also has some kind of a name where it's older. Actually, BSD jails is, I think, older than this. And the main idea is to spin something that is nearly like the virtual engine, but it's not. It is lighter in resources and demands for us as owners of the machine we are working on. So Docker is actually isolating the part for us. It is isolating resources like memory, disk, network configuration, and in this reserved area we are able to start something, and that something is usually daemons, like web server daemon, PHP daemon, whatever daemon we need for our application. And because it is isolated from the system, it only uses the kernel of the Linux or Mac, but actually does not. It works differently on Mac and on Windows. For those that came late, the right part was biased to the Windows and the left part was biased to the Mac. That big guy is a Mac guy also, so that still stands. I will talk now about Linux in the first place. So in Linux environment, you have the kernel that they are using, but that system is isolated. That means whatever you do in your container, it is contained and it doesn't pollute your system. For instance, on my own system today, I don't have a web server, I don't have database server. It is just my plain operating system as it is. I came to that conclusion after few system upgrades, after few requirements of using older PHP, and I needed to match Nginx because I preferred Nginx and I couldn't have at the same time Nginx and Apache that is built into the Mac. So that is my own use case scenario, but that is not too much different from the things that you would need. I was thinking about Linux containers first. Why? But because it looked to me like a plain thing. So why would I go one level higher in dependencies and some things? Why would I complicate things when I can go with the straight things? My reasoning was that I wanted to use the least resources on my developing machine, and that could give me results I want. It appeared in time that that kind of reasoning was not right. Why? Because Docker, in the meantime, developed into the complete ecosystem with the pre-built images, with the command line tools that are doing really stable and that are actually encapsulating some things that you can do with Linux containers, but you have to do that manually. And that manual work is not a small one. The thing is, you can use Docker. There are probably other container technologies I'm not going to speak about because I didn't learn actually about them. I made a strong decision not to do that and to take the Docker path, because in the end, why are so many people using Ubuntu? It's very simple, because many people are using Ubuntu. So you have drivers, you have answers, you have a very active community, and that is why you stand behind the Ubuntu. Maybe it's not the best Linux there is, but it's very popular, and that's that. So in the end, I just decided not to complicate things for myself, to go with Docker. And with that Docker, I decided to try to see if it's possible to use it in my local environment, if it's possible for me to put up a few projects that we'll be working on, and to have, maybe some of you have heard of one tool that is called Drush, and in Drush there is something that is called make, so Drush make. So some people are developing sites in a way that they produce the Drush make file, which is kind of a profile. I mean, we all know it's not a profile, but it is something like a description of the things that we need in our Drupal site, and we don't have actually to remember the whole code from the Drupal. Why would we do that? It is on the repo, so we don't need it in Git. What would we put in Git? We'll put drush make. I mean, drush make dot whatever you want. For instance, my project dot drush dot make, or you can name it whatever you want. So I was thinking, well, that's it. That is what I want. I don't want to remember Nginx or anything else. I just want some kind of a build, so I can have it in a configuration file. I can connect the containers. They will perform in one way and enable me to make my Drupal development. And it was almost scary how easy it was. So I'm not an easy person in any way, so I was researching about Docker and learning and trying to figure out some things. And now I will tell you some bad ways that I was working with until I realized some things. First thing, how Docker operates. Docker operates in a daemon. So when you install the Docker, I will skip that. I was thinking that it was a good idea, but it's not actually. It's just some command line. You can go to the Docker site and find how it's done. So it's very easy, really. So when you install the Docker, it's just a daemon that is running in the background. So that daemon is expecting connections, like you issue command that is Docker or DockerCompose. That command brings up the containers, and containers work just like they're on your own system. So actually with DockerCompose file, you have that drush make description that actually works for your environment. The first thing that came to my mind is, why would I have a separate container for Nginx, container for MySQL, container for PHP, container for Redis, container for Mailhog, container for Varnish, container for Solaire? It looks like nuts to me. I mean, why would I have 7 containers raised up, running, communicating with each other? I said, no, it is a bad thing. I need just the thing to run Drupal. And then I fell into the trap. Yes, you can build a container that can contain everything that I mentioned now. So like you make a container that contains already Nginx, PHP, and then I realized, so if Nginx change, then I will have to build a container from the start again. If PHP changes, I will also need to build it again. And then I realized I'm not thinking well. Because the main idea with containers, you see, there is not one container. There are at least 9 containers on this picture, and I mentioned 7. So what is that talking to us? For instance, when you're coding in PHP, do you make one index PHP which is 2 MB long, or perhaps you divide that into the files, functions, then you include or not include, and that starts to ring a bell in my head that the previous thinking was completely wrong. Why? You can very easily take current official Nginx container for Nginx. And you can also take official PHP for PHP and official MySQL, and then you realize the main thing. You're not thinking about how the Nginx is built, because you have to ask yourself a question. Are you a DevOps? So are you system admin working on Nginx, or are you the Drupal developer? So let's be clear about that. No, you're Drupal developer. So you actually want to develop in Drupal and not to burden yourself with the dependencies, building, compiling things, checking. Why would you check things? There is community that is already working on that. So that is the main thing, like standing on the shoulder of the giants, and I love that. Because you leave the Nginx to the Nginx people, and you leave the MySQL to MySQL people, and your thing is actually to just connect them and let them work. That way, you can also use that container, maybe, I'm not saying, but maybe you can use that in production as well. You can give your configuration to the colleague, and he can download and not care about building or any complex layout. And that's the main thing. That gives you the ability to use just one DockerCompose file. I will show you the example. From that composer file, he brings up the containers, and they're just working. And that's the main idea. So let me show you. Okay. Now let me show you how approximately how does that look. This is one DockerCompose file for the project I'm actually working on at the moment. And you can see the structure. It's a YAML file. We are all familiar now, thanks to the Drupal 8. And you can see that we have declaration here. Version, then there is services, then there is service like MariaDB, service PHP, service Nginx. Lower there is PHPMyAdmin. There is mailhog, and I decided that I don't need these things. This DockerCompose file actually connects all the containers, makes the communication between the containers, and they all actually operate. I mean, my Mac sees them on a port. You see that 8072, 8702, 8700, and that enables me to type in browser URL localhost 8700, and Nginx will answer. This port, this is the mapping. So the second thing is how the system sees, and the first thing is the internal link. I will just now say one thing about Docker in environments. So we have three, if I may say, three major operating systems. One is Windows, one is Linux, and the third one is Mac. Not in that particular order. So the thing is, in Linux, that's it. We don't have to talk about it, that's just it. The only thing you need is actually to install Docker machine that is well documented on the Docker site, and there is not much to talk about it. Other two platforms, Mac and Windows, they have a small problem. What is the small problem? virtualization in the machines works, I mean in a Linux machine and the Docker works, that Docker is borrowing the kernel and is isolating processes in its own namespace, C groups and memory, CPU and everything else. But that doesn't work on Mac or on Windows. Why? Because they don't have Linux kernel. So something is needed to provide that kernel for the Windows and for the Mac. How it's done? Lately, it is done by using the application. On the Mac, it is Docker for Mac. It is visible on the Docker site. And for Windows, it is Docker for Windows. But there is a requirement. For the Mac, requirement is OS 10.10 at least, and the machine that is on Intel processor, that is i family, i3, i5, i7, it's okay. But you cannot use Core 2 Duo because it doesn't have the capabilities that it needs. On the Windows side, the requirement is, unfortunately, Windows 10. Windows 10 and the same thing about Intel processor, AMD is fine. Why is that needed? Because Docker needs kernel, and those applications, Docker for Mac and Docker for Windows, are actually supplying the very, very tiny kernel, Linux kernel, that is part of the Alpine Linux kernel. That is, I mean, it is amazing how small it is. Alpine Docker image is like 5 megabytes. Don't trust me, just go to the Docker site. You won't believe it. And it is a perfect platform to build your own Docker image from. I really love it. It doesn't have bash, it doesn't have daemons, it doesn't have millions of things, but it works. If you're fluent in terminal, you will have no problem. So that is the only thing that is complicated on Mac and on Windows. And also, networking, I mean connecting with the Docker is a bit, but just a tiny bit different on Mac and Windows and on Linux. On Linux, it is natural part of the system. On the Mac and on Windows, you have to take a note, really, just a note, that you're actually communicating with one virtual system that is the foundation for Docker. This middle point doesn't exist in Linux. And that's the only thing that sometimes your configuration may not work as you expected. That's just a tiny note. So when you're working in Mac or in Windows camp, just if you're having some troubles with networking, or you make something work in your local environment, and then you're asking yourself why it's not working on a server, it could be that. It just could be that. So keep in mind that actually Windows and Mac need to have one additional layer between the operating system and the Docker itself. There are a ton of stories that I could tell about that, but we will have to skip it because I think that time is seriously running out. So we're past 30 minutes. So the next thing that I want to tell you is that even older machines and even older Windows, like Windows 7 or Windows 8, they can still use Docker, but not Docker for Windows or Docker for Mac. They have to build a virtual machine. And then that virtual machine will enable Docker to work. The thing is, actually, the Windows 10 and the Mac OS 10.10, they have a hypervisor that is enabling the new kind of virtualization that doesn't need VirtualBox or Fusion or any other heavy virtualization technology. And that's the main thing. So maybe I lost you on this operating system details. Anyway, you will have to try that and hit the wall yourself, and then you will learn. Do you have any questions? Okay, you lost your moment. So when we go past these problems of installing, we are much better. Because once you have Docker running, that's it. And you really don't have to take care about that anymore. So when you have the Docker working, then it's working and that's it. And you're ready to use DockerCompose file. The thing is, I'm using Docker for Drupal. I decided that I will use that project and not other ones that I will show you also. Why did I choose this one? It is the lightest and most complete that I'm aware of. So maybe there are better projects. You can always build yourself a better Docker project for Drupal. But I personally, I don't like that. So I'm giving that control to other people, and I'm trying to use the system, to go with the flow and not to reinvent the wheel. I will now try just to give you a brief update, let's say, on other systems. So this is the official site for Docker for Drupal. It is dockerfordrupal.org, so it's very easy to remember. I would advise you to go and view it on GitHub, and when you download, this download zip is actually just a DockerCompose file. That DockerCompose file works out of the box, but I usually try to change some things for my usual workflow. And when you look at the site, you see here are instructions like overview, containers, integration. Here it is, how it works. These are the containers that the would-be, would-be probably, they made it. These are the names, so you can see that he made 3 custom, and these are used from the official repositories. When you see this underscore, that means this is official by the Apache Foundation. This is official by Memcached project, and these are their own. I will show you practically how that works. I just want to show you. So here are instructions, how to install it. In the Linux, you have to change the group and permit container to access files on your local system. On Mac and Windows, it works out of the box. You just pick up the Drupal version, change the variable in DockerCompose. You can change the PHP. So if you wish 7 or 5.6, you can change database credential in the settings PHP, or you can change it also there. That is understandable very easily. You can decide if you need other containers and then remove the comments, and you can activate them. And in the end, when you're finished, you just say DockerCompose up daemon, and it's working. After it's working, you can check with the command DockerCompose process status, and that's it. You can access the site on localhost and the port you chose. Here is if you wish to enter the container itself. So you use DockerCompose, execute, PHP as PHP container, and shell where it just gives you into the shell, and you can use Drush or anything else. And here are other instructions that we don't need to go into details. The thing is, Xdebug on the Linux works out of the box, and on the Mac it doesn't work out of the box because of the middle layer. That's the problem I have most. So people on the Mac need to enter these things, and then PHPStorm works just fine.
For Xdebug, please.
Like, this all will be available. After all, we are recorded, so probably it will be on some YouTube or something. Here is the needed configuration you need to, but this is normal. You need that as well if you're working in a local or production environment and you already know that or don't care about that. So here are all the instructions how that works. Mail hog is very interesting if you don't know. It prevents Drupal site from sending mails and expose the mail in the web interface. So when Drupal sends the mail, it awaits you in the web interface, so you can check that out. And here are some other informations about that. Anyway, you can always go on the GitHub and view how it's done. Being on the GitHub, that means it's open source. You can always check on the GitHub. I will show you now. So you can check on the GitHub. You see, there is only DockerCompose. In that DockerCompose, you see it's the same just as I'm using. Some things are commented out, but you can uncomment that and get that options. And this project is actually composed of other projects. And if you wish to build your own containers, just like those containers, then you can come into the project, for instance, and here is the Docker file. I will not go through this Docker file because it's a system of itself, but I will just tell you that so building a container is just like building a server, except that you have a file like this. So what do we have here? We have from, that's the base image that building starts from. You have run that sets environment, sets install command, so it installs these utilities and configure them. This is all installing PHP 7 components. Here we have changing configurations, removing temporary files, making files for log, and entry point to the container is in the end somewhere. So if someone wishes to build their own version, you're welcome. But that's the another thing, really. That's the completely different thing about building the systems, so we will not go into details about that. I will, once I show you the other projects and interesting things, I will show you how it really works. So we will make a container, Drupal, we will start it and see how that works, and that's when we will end. Because I say it's really huge area that we would need to cover, and we don't really have time because our stomach is working, and I hope. But based on the experience from yesterday, we will have enough time to work long hours before they manage to give us bloody food. Okay, so this is Docker for Drupal. I prefer it, but that doesn't mean it's the best. There are other things like you probably heard for this guy. We don't have his picture, but he's one of the rare people here who are actually taller than me. He's also bigger than me. Probably could beat the shit out of me, but he's not here, so I can bitch him all along.
He's going to watch the video.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Anyway, accidentally, he actually made a post on this real thing. I was thinking that if he's here, I would have to adjust the thing completely, but he's not. He decided to use other project by other people, which looks, you wouldn't believe this. They even use the same template, for God's sake. The only thing that misses is a 4 there, but the project is completely different. The VodB project is very active and actually is the base of their business. You wouldn't believe that I didn't knew they had a business. I thought it's just open source project of some kind, but no, they actually are building the business on Drupal containers. And this is just the initiative. Maybe they also have a business, I don't know. I didn't check that. But this is not as active as the previous one. So I'm really satisfied with the Docker for Drupal. So you see the difference is really minor, like this and like this. Really small difference. I don't know why it is. They tried to make something like merging of the projects, but didn't manage actually. In a GitHub, they started discussing, but actually these guys are not that active, and that is why I prefer the previous one. But that doesn't mean this is bad. And actually, this project is obviously used by Janez. And he made a really nice post here. Why would anyone do that? And how is which containers he's using, images, building, bringing his configuration. So you see, it's always the same. You have database, you have Nginx. Yes, it's Nginx. You have PHP, you have Drush, and everything else. So there are many ways to pack the same thing. This is really good post. I really enjoy that. And the thing with Docker is that I've never managed to find all information on one place. Usually, people who write posts like this are very deep in the matter, you know, and they usually miss something because they know that by heart. It's understandable by them. But it's not for us who are reading. So you will usually have to read a few posts about something before you can make your own modification or something like that. So this post is really nice. You will very easily find it. Just type in Janez Urevc Drupal Docker, and it will be first on the list. Try to follow that tutorial. It's not bad. If you type in Docker for Drupal, you will have many hits and many projects and many explanations how that could be done. This is Riccardo Amaro, probably Italian or maybe Swiss, I don't know. He's from chapter 3 maybe. They also make some posts, and he also has some his vision. You see, there is a Docker file. That means that you can build your own Docker based on his experience. This repo contains a recipe for making a Docker container for Drupal using blah, blah, blah. But I think that he has one container that contains everything. If you go to Docker library, there is official Drupal repository. You can pull their images and also try to use them. You see, there are tags for different versions for Drupal 8, Drupal 7, with Apache, with I think that FPM is with Nginx, but I'm not sure. And here are explanations. And then there is chapter 3 blog, Brian Fisher, okay. And then there are our friends from FFW, David Hernandez. He wrote about their vision that is called Druid, like Drupal and Docker, like Druid. And they also have a very, very long explanation, what did they do, how it's working, and so on. But I think that their version is based on all the Docker that is actually using Vagrant and virtual machine to make it sure and easy for any environment. Like, they don't care if you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux. It will work. It is heavier on resources on your local machine, but I'm speaking from not recent experience. So I worked with them about a year ago with this Druid system on my own machine. But at that time, that was the only way to do that. So Docker for Mac is from April or something, and Windows also. Yes, so use it to install prerequisites, which includes Docker, Vagrant, and VirtualBox. That means that their system is working wherever. But whatever kind of Drupal Docker you're using, at the end, you're at the same point with your work. So all these projects are just enabling you to use Docker. Once you set up all things, that's it. And then you only use DockerCompose file and do the things from that. Now let's take a look. Yes, that's the Docker, blah, blah, blah. I thought that I will have more time, but obviously I don't. So let's see how that works. I have some projects here. For instance, let's make a completely new one. Like, okay, I will use standard commands. Iron. Okay, so it's clean. Let's take a thing from here. I will just save it there. So it's in Iron, DockerCompose. Let's see, what do we have here? Nothing's, that's just regular stuff. My own version is using, you can see here, Drupal as .root. Why do I do that? Because I like to have things separated. So when I start a project, it looks like this. So, how does that look? I have databases where I keep databases dumps. I use DockerCompose, which brings me up the Docker. Docker runtime, these are the folders that are connected into the containers. And in those containers, I have, so inside, there are my databases, my theme for PHPMyAdmin, and Drush registry rebuild that I need from project to project. I decided to use this convention. So whichever version of the Drupal, I just download it and it's there. And then I make a symlink. So my DockerCompose is always the same. And the version could be whatever. So let's see how that works in practice. First of all, okay, DockerCompose is here. We said blah, blah, blah. It's all more or less the same. So I will take a shortcut like drush download Drupal 7, sorry. I'm an old guy, I'm still in Drupal 7 world. The thing is, I'm using Dockers only for services. And my Drupal is in my file space. So I'm using editor on my local environment. And you can see that easily here. So here it is how it is. I will now link the things like I will make symlink to Drupal like that. And that will be named Drupal. After that, we have this. So I will now start a Docker. Yes, because this is my old file, I will have to change this port that I'm using. For instance, let it be 88. Okay, let here be 88. PHP and Nginx, let it be here 88, and here. Okay, let's save it. The thing is, you need, in order to have many projects, at the moment, the easiest thing for me to do is to change the port. so they're all accessible at their own port if you have multiple projects running. So that is why I needed to manually change the port. At this moment, I would type docker-compose up -d. That means, please start the containers, demonize them, so they are running in the background, and that's it. Let's see how that works. It would be different if you do that. Why? Because I already have these disk images, and that works like in object-oriented programming. It is spinning an instance. So we have Docker images in the file system, and for my own project at this moment, he is creating an instance of that image and spinning it, so it's working now. Let's go to the browser. This is not useful. Localhost. Please don't fail. Here we are. So you see, that's all. I just took a DockerCompose, changed things, and I'm in Drupal, and it's working. Let's make it till the end. The only thing you need to do with this is to, there is only one thing. So we will, you have seen that I've used Drupal, then Drupal, then Drupal, and here you have to type MariaDB. Why is that so? Because containers, we are actually executing inside the container. And the Nginx container sees the MariaDB as a host with a name. And the name of container is the name of that other host. Now, it's working, it's way out. And of course, it will finish, and that will be it. While that is happening, we can take a look at the same localhost, the same address, but 01. That's PHPMyAdmin. It will log you immediately. Here you are. We can use it just as we would use PHPMyAdmin. And we can use, I think this, but we will need localhost. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that is why Morten said, never do a live thing, never. And you see, it's not a good thing. But for this case, it really doesn't matter. Probably something weird, you know, it always happens. But anyway, it works. It works. This is the proof of a What? You don't believe me? It's working. We have also run here something like, let me see. Really, dude? Okay. Maybe we're blocked in some way, but I will not now take any chances. So this is basically how it works. So we just use a Docker file, and just out of the box, it made something. So here is Drupal. We can use Drush to get into the PHP container. Drush get the login details, and they will log in. Probably I shouldn't be working with, I shouldn't have messed with the PHPMyAdmin. Maybe they clashed in the, it's not, as I said, it doesn't matter. Actually, this gives you everything you need. So you have PHP to import or export file. You have your Drupal. You have even Mailhog that will show you the messages that Drupal is sending. The thing is actually in your, let us see. So here is how it looks. So this is databases. That's just my convention. It's not required. That's just the thing that I like to have. In the Docker, you see here is the Drush. Here I download my Drush commands and make them persistent. So if I stop the Docker, that's the thing I was missing. If you stop the Docker, everything that is inside the container is lost. And when you start, I mean, you can start and stop it. But if you bring that down, you will lose everything that was inside the Docker, because remember, that is instance we just made from the original image. But if you want to have things that are persistent for your project, then you link your local file system, link to the container. So container see those local folders as its local folders. And that is how we make a database like this. You see? We have, this is, wait a minute. Here is our Drupal database. So in order to be persistent, it is in our local system. So whenever you start or delete instance or do whatever, it will reuse the things from your disk. The same thing goes for the Drupal itself. So here is the Drupal, usual thing, you know, sites, default files, everything is here. That gives you the ability, so you're not working inside the container. Only the service is inside the container and you're working outside of the container. So whatever you're using, your tools like PHPStorm or Sublime Edit or VI, maybe someone is pervert enough to do that. Actually, I was working with Nano, and that's really hard, but it's manageable. Anyway, that is how we spin up containers. If we're finished with that container, we just bring that down like this. DockerCompose, guess what? Down. He first stops the containers and then removes the instance from our system, and it's gone. If at any point in time you need that again, you can always type again DockerCompose up, and that's it. And it will be again available. So that's it. And let's try. Do you have any questions? I mean, I've really stepped over time. So, no, it's 1 o'clock. Let's summarize. I think the Docker is a very good thing because it enables us to produce different environments for different projects for the reasons known to us, managers, clients, hosting company. So the thing is, if we want to make a good project, we should match the production server as near as possible. Docker enables that us. We can remember the Docker file in our GitHub with the project and always build the same version of the environment whenever we need. When we don't need that, we can just remove it from the memory, remove it from the hard disk, push it to the client GitHub account and forget about it. When client in 2 years remembers that he needs some kind of a change, you just pull back, bring up your Docker again, and that's it. So I think that this is the good thing. This is very flexible, very serious community is behind the project, and you will never be left alone with something that is way off. Docker is still maturing, so it is not something like rock solid proven workflow. There are many workflows. People are actually still experimenting if that's good or if it's not. I am personally not aware that there are many providing companies like, let me see. I'm not sure what are they providing, but their main idea is, did I or did I not? Oh. So actually, as I said, I didn't knew there was a company that is actually working on that. So there is something like they're giving you the ability to test your containers and then to go to your servers. There is an after thing about this, and that is managing your Docker, resources, containers, and everything else with Mesos. That is open source projects from Apache. You probably heard about Kubernetes, did you? Kubernetes is also, so Kubernetes is not some different thing, it's the same thing. So it is the management for the Docker containers. It is based on that, and there are also projects, oh yes, this very interesting project, it is called Rancher. And the good thing about Rancher is that Rancher is actually giving you the ability to control your containers with the manager you like. So it helps you to manage with Mesos or with Kubernetes or anything else. And the Rancher service is actually in a container. So you can try Rancher and not to mess up with your own system. And that's the thing I like. I like to put up new services and new crazy things, but in the containers. And when I don't need them, I can just cut and dump them. So that would be practically it. And I try to summarize as much as I can. My personal mail is mladen@gmail. So if you wish to have any kind of an update, I will try to make a post with the things that I've said now, and you're completely free to send me email, and I will mail you the link with the things that I was speaking now, and that I will make a post for like starting up with Docker for Drupal. So please, do you have any practical questions? Philosophical are also okay. Thank you.
So I saw you put your MySQL stuff outside. Like, is there a specific reason? Because one thing that we see is that Docker for Mac on OS X is part of the slow. So you shouldn't put any you should at least as possible to actually have the files in the OS X, because the synchronization is just so super slow. Like, or is there another reason that you want to have actual access to the MariaDB files?
Yes. So the main thing that MariaDB files are outside of the container is persistency. So if you bring the container down and you start the container again, it will find the databases because they're persistent. They're in your file system.
You can do named volumes in Docker. You can do named volumes. Like Docker itself has a possibility to have a volume that exists even though you remove the container and you start it.
Yes, you're right. Yes, again, you're right. But for my use case scenarios, where you're actually in the building development process, and when it's not too hard on you, I still didn't have the thing that it was working so slow that it was not usable. But that's my case. That doesn't mean that it works for everyone. I think that the lack of speed on the Mac, so that's my personal feeling, is that that's much like overhyped. I didn't. Okay. You're Mac guy. I know he's the Mac guy. So he speaks from experience. But I didn't have that much information needed to be pulled. So whenever you're in a range about maybe 1,000 something nodes users or what, I didn't see. At the moment, actually, a guy who is working with me is having something like 300,000 entities of something. and he was actually amazed how it's, but he's working on Linux. He's not working on Mac. Okay, I didn't say it is, you know, there is no such a thing that one size fits all. So you always have to look for your own solutions to some things. For instance, one guy actually is working on the following setup. When he's starting the containers, he actually copy from the local system into the container, and when he's bringing down the containers, he's actually copying that back to the main file system. That works for him perfectly. He's even using that in the production, and he said something like, I rarely need to do that, so it's not overhead for me. That is his reasoning. So everyone has some particular reasoning why something is better than something else. For me, I don't like this port thing. For me, it's like, I always have to remember which port and the localhost and everything else. I hope that I will make some session where I will fix that in some container that is, for instance, you can have a load balancer. You can have DNS in a container that works for other containers, and that is something that Rancher may bring me. But I've just started that a few months ago, and it's a huge system. I tried to install Kubernetes, for instance, because I thought that I will make management with Kubernetes, but it appeared that Kubernetes depends on Ubuntu and depends on some things that I could not match on my production server because it's already on Debian and it doesn't work on Debian. It specifically requires, Kubernetes specifically require Ubuntu, and then I gave up. In the process, while I was examining the thing, I found that I was reading like 100 posts, and in each post there was just one tiny paragraph that I actually needed to solve my problem. And that is something that we're still facing, that people who are writing about Docker are usually, or either they're very, very beginner, like a light introduction, or they're so high that they just miss some things, and you follow their steps and it doesn't work for you. And it works for them. And that's just the experience. So it's not very mature technology, but I think that it's very, very promising. Some other question? Speak out loud. I can hear you. No! I'm encouraging you to speak up if you have any question. No?
It's common practice in all areas that it's or too simple or too general.
Yes, unfortunately it's like that. So thank you for your attendance. It really meant a lot to me. Probably you will see me if you're coming to Zagreb next year. I will be definitely there. I will try to be on DrupalCon in Vienna. That is, Zagreb is in May next year, and DrupalCon is in like October or something, September in Vienna. And you have my mail, Twitter, whatever. So you can really contact me. I will be glad to help you with your own projects. If you mail me, I will mail you back when I put something like this online, because there is really huge interest in this subject. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attendance.